Hey everybody, so welcome to tutorial 5, and this is a continuation of tutorial 4. So in tutorial 4, if you watched tutorial 4, if you thought that you ever wanted to install a web server on your computer to do some web development, then you would have done tutorial 4, and this is a continuation. So if you haven't done tutorial 4, I recommend you do that first, and then you do this one where we install WordPress on the server we created in tutorial 4. If you've just navigated here, then do tutorial 4. And if you don't ever want to locally develop, and if you don't know what that means, then I would move on to the next tutorial. So in tutorial 4, we installed our web server, which is down here. I'm going to get that running. It's fine, it's green, everything's happy. And we said in tutorial 4 that if we were to, this is running some services, there we go, went to the www directory, we could drop some stuff in here, and this is where our web apps would be dropped and installed. So we want to get the WordPress downloads into this folder, and then we can set up a web page which is running WordPress, and we're going to do that. If you also go to localhost, that will load up the web view of these files, and we saw that we had some 2 projects here that will just go to website 1, which is in this folder. So in the same way we go here, there's nothing really going on. We want to set up a WordPress folder in here, and we want to be able to navigate to localhost WordPress. So we've got this going, we've got our area where we want to throw the WordPress files once we download them, and we've got a way of navigating to them via our web server. So what we need to do is we need to download the WordPress software. And so how you do that is you go to the internet and you write in WordPress, and you want to go to WordPress.org, not .com. .com is a blogging platform, same company. .org is where they have the software. So you go to WordPress.org and you click download WordPress. It'll come up and says available in different languages, American or UK. And we click download, click on this with a zip file, which is only 8 megabytes, which is fantastic for a massively powerful CMS of WordPress. So this www directory happened to appear in my quick links. If it hadn't done that for you, then you need to go to my computer C drive where you installed this app here, and drop it into there. So it's actually the 64-bit one. This is the historical one I used. And you need to go to www, which is what appears here, and you need to drop that zip file in there. So that'll download that. If we go back to our files, notice it's here. Want to unzip that file, let you do anything else. There we go. Unzip that file. It's highly compressed, zipped. So it's going to take a little bit to put all those files into this directory here that it's created when it's unzipped, and it's got the version number of WordPress. WordPress always changes, and it's always good to go to this website and download the latest version of WordPress when you start to do some web development. I always keep the zip file there, so I'm aware. I don't delete it, so I'm aware of what I was talking about here, and it's probably good to even keep. There's no spaces, the name of that folder there. Okay, so what we can do while we're waiting for that to expand is talk about what the steps will be that will be involved in terms of installing WordPress. Now, WordPress is a web application, so we've got it's one of these guys here, web files, and it's running on this here. WordPress is here, and it's an example of an application on WordPress. All the files that it's unzipping now contain JavaScript files, HTML files, files that are PHP files, and other kind of files like CSS files, which are design files, and they're all packaged up into this WordPress folder. And that's going to run just simply because we've already set up the web server. By dropping it in here, it automatically will be running. But when you drop WordPress in, the installation process, which is what we're going through, we will need to do a few things. We will need to tell WordPress what we want its name to be, what the default web page will be called, website will be called. We need to give it a username and password, and we need to set up some default options, like what country we're in, things like that, just like you would when installing Spotify. The difference with WordPress is that when you install Spotify, everything inside of it's kind of exe or its application works quite comfortably together. Because the web server has, because this web server here has a place for us to put web files, we're happy, we've got our web files. But I also happen to know, and you'll get familiar with, that whenever you install a web application, either online or locally, the web application requires a database to work. Web apps are such that they're split between files that do encode, that do the display, and the data lives in a database. And the reason why we have this thing called PHP My Admin UI to connect to the database is because we have to create a new database for our WordPress instance. And that sounds a bit scary, but we'll go through that, and you only do that once. So you need to set up a new database, and you need to put the files in. So all these files are sitting on the web server area and hosted by Apache. And MySQL database, we have to go in there and we have to create a specific WordPress database for this folder that we're talking about. So this folder here, we go in, this folder here represents one web page. So that's the name of the web page. So if we were just, like, for example, we just delete these two web pages here, we can delete everything in this folder if we want to, but I wouldn't recommend it. We go here and we call this our test site. Call it our test site. Got to start all lowercase, so we could do that. So stuff up our test site. So now inside test site we have WordPress. So we navigated to localhost our test site and our web browser here, or we refresh the page, it will appear under my projects, our test site. Then what we're actually hosting, or what we're looking for here, is it's actually, I don't know if it's a bug with the system, but it should be localhost, which always, and then the name of our site. So it's our test site. So if we go here, then it shows a web version of this, and it doesn't look very pretty. That's because WordPress is actually in here. So what we're going to do is we'll just drag this guy to the www folder. You see WordPress here. Delete this guy because we had two folders deep. Relabel this guy our site. So basically under here, all these files here, PHP files and directories, are all straight here, and we refresh this page. Notice it will serve up whatever WordPress installation files need to happen, and WordPress is package these files up such a way that if you put the name of your site and then all the files, root files, are called the root directory. So when you navigate to it, it automatically navigates you straight away, reads this file here, index file, and it points you, it knows this, it saves a piece of code in here, and it knows that you've never installed WordPress before. So it automatically takes us to a file that's actually in this directory and a file called setup config. So it actually displays this file, and this file will have all the code we need to install. Okay, so everything's in there, and we've got a new site, which is fantastic. First thing we get asked to specify is a language. They've got better over the years, and there's probably a New Zealand one, so choose that. If you're American, choose the top. Click next, and it runs you through like a wizard. And it runs you through, and it says, "Hey, welcome to WordPress. Before getting started, we need some information on the database. On this, we need to know a bit about the database. They're going to use that information. They're going to create a config file, which is going to allow the file to talk to the database. And it's saying if it doesn't create automatically, don't worry. There's some ways in which we can help you. And we say what you need to know is that we need to know the following items before proceeding. We need to know your database name, your username, your password, your host, and your table preferences. And all these here are like, whoa, 5 things. You need to know about all these things. I'm not sure what these are. If we click Let's Go, we'll be asked for these pieces of information here. Now, because what we can do, there's two ways of doing this, and I'm going to do it the rough way. If you go back to your web server, and you go here and you click on the option that says PHP MyAdmin, that's the user interface for talking to the database. You go, it's going to load, and it's going to ask us what a username and password is. And by default, if you haven't touched anything or changed anything, the username is always root and the password is always blank. You click go, and this connects to the database. We're able to create a new database. And I'm not going to go through how to do that. What I know a little trick is that if we just close out of there for a second and we go back to our install option, which is here, and it asks us what our database name is, I would suggest that your database name is the name of your website. So our test site. So it's easily the username. What you can do, this is not best practice. What you can do just to speed up this process, and put root in there, and the password is nothing. If you put the root as a username and password is nothing, you are using the admin login. That is not recommended. You should not use the admin login to create a database, because that database, you could have multiple websites using the admin login, and that's dangerous. So if we went back to my admin, there we go, PHP MyAdmin, and logged in here. Effectively, we put that in there. It has to have all the power in the world to create whatever database you want, and that's really not good. Before showing you how to create a database in there, I'm going to go over these two other options. This is localhost. This is saying where is the database hosted, and it is the same. Whatever that option there will be the same as whatever option is in the web browser. When you go back here into this guy. When you click on that, and if it's just got localhost and no numbers or anything, and that's what it's asking for. It's saying where do you want the database is hosted here. It's always localhost, unless you've made a change. What would you like the table preferences to be, prefix to be? Don't worry about that. Specifically, just that the tables in the database will have WP to talk about WordPress beforehand. You just need to enter that. I'd leave these two by default. That's the name of your site, and your username and your password should be specific to your database and not necessarily the root one. If I click submit, I would have given this enough information for it to create a new database inside our MySQL database. I would have created a new database called our test site. But I don't want to put in the root username and password, because that's quite bad. What that means is that if anyone hacked our website, they could have access to all our databases for all our websites. So if we go here, which of course is accessed via this area, if you go up to a new on the left-hand side, or databases, it's the same option. You can go create. What you can do is you click new here, it will take us to the same page. It's one and the same. Get our database name, chuck it here, leave this option, click create. All of a sudden, it creates a blank database with all these options that you don't care about. Okay, so we've actually created our database. What we can do also is we need to go to privileges, and you'll notice that by default, privileges, which is like the users that can access this database, it's got root and it's got all the details there. And what I've said is I don't think it's a good idea for us to use the root, the admin for all our databases login, the login details for that could access all our databases for a particular website, because if we had someone hack this website, they could have access to all our other databases. So what we need to do is we need to go down here and go add new account. And don't worry about these two things, just type in here. So what I would say is I'm just going to be real simple. This is probably also not good, but I'm also going to have a username called the same as our database. I'm going to enter a password. That's going to be some complex password. I'm going to re-enter it just like you would on a website, forgetting about the rest, forgetting about all these other pieces of information. Just the username, the database will retype, or you can generate one here. Click on grant all privileges on database. Yep. Which is already ticked by default. Leave these pieces of information and go to here. It's not the best interface, okay, but what we've really specified is we've created a new username and a password that we know, and we click go. And it's telling me the password's done the same, just like a website, which is fine. So I'm going to go back and type and correct that and click go. And it will create this here is a piece of SQL code. It's just told us that it's done what we've asked it to do. If we go back to databases and we click on our site database and we go back to privileges, you'll see that it's added 2 bits and pieces here. So our site will be able to, our site username will be able to log in here. So we go back here and we change that username now to what we just entered and the password to what we just entered. Happens to be a password there, which is pretty simple. We click submit. This page will come up like this if you've done those steps correctly. And if it says it can't connect, you haven't done those steps correctly, and rewind the video and start again. Click run the install so it can connect to the database. So that was that scary thing about creating a database. Well, we've done that. And we've got all the files in the right place and the web server is running. So now WordPress is being installed. The last thing it will ask you to do is, what do you want the name of the site to be? And I'm going to call it our test site. You can have gaps now. You can call it whatever you like. What would you like so this is what is your username and password for the website when you log into WordPress, not what is the database one. So I might say I want my username to be admin. I might be quite happy with the password. I'll copy that and I'm going to enter my email address. So if there's any problem, then I put a valid email there. So if there's any problems logging on, you can reset your password. And do we want Google to view it? Yes, we do. It doesn't matter if it's locally, so Google can't access it. Once you've entered all that information, you click install WordPress. And that's the last piece of information that it needs from you to go away and to create the configuration file and basically create WordPress. Put my username and password there. And if I enter my password that I've just copied and say remember me and say yes forever, and I'm now on WordPress and I now have WordPress installed. You'll notice that up here it's got localhost as always, and then the name of your site and admin. And if we go to the site, we'll have localhost, our site. We've now got WordPress installed just like we would on a web server, and that is the name of our kind of URL, if you like, which is that one folder that we've just created here. So this here is now here, and all of those files are working correctly and being configured correctly, and we don't need to worry about them anymore. But we've got access to add some themes and stuff directly if we wanted to, just like FTP if you're on a web host, if you know what that means. And now our WordPress site's all ready to go, and we can follow the other tutorials we've done. Thanks. All covered. Cheers.